Turn to our scriptures, and I'm going to read from the NIV version today. The words on the screen are from the RSV. We turn to our scriptures in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, 43 through 51. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, "Follow me." Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." "Nazareth? Can anything good come from there?" Nathanael asked. "Come and see," said Philip. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said to him, "Here is a true Israelite, in whom there is nothing false." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree beside Philip, before he called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus said, "You believe because I told you. I saw you under the fig tree. You shall see greater things than that." He then added, "I tell you the truth. You shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." This is the reading of the word. Thanks be to God. That story that we read today in 1 John is the calling of the second disciples. And it's one of the first things that Jesus did when he started his ministry. He was baptized by John, and then it took another couple of hours, a couple of days, but he started gathering people to him. He was getting the team together. Because although we know there are captains and co-captains and all that other sort of stuff, so many things in our life take teamwork. It's more than just going out there and doing it on our own. There's so much that we can't do on our own. It takes teamwork. And that's one of the harder things to realize in the life of the church, right? Though we preach it out wonderfully, and we recognize that Jesus had 12 disciples, and those 12 disciples would then go forth and make more disciples of all the nations, if you read the Gospel of Matthew correctly, we struggle. And that's because over the past 50 to 60 years, there's been a generational divide on understanding faith. We've gone from faith being a community understanding to faith being me, myself, and I. We've taken the team understanding out of faith to the individual understanding of faith. We forget that to actually understand and perceive our faith in the way that Jesus talked about it, we have to be part of a body. You see, we can believe in Jesus all we want. We can name countless people, friends, family members, all of them who say, "I'm a Christian," right? How many of you people know exactly the type of person I'm talking about? I'm a Christian. But how I understand God is how I understand God. So that church thing isn't for me. It's the truth, right? And we're seeing it more and more and more on a generational divide. We can accept that. You can look around our church and we recognize that that has happened. It becomes why? Where did we as a church fail? That's not an easy question, is it? But sometimes in order to come up with solutions, we have to recognize the problem. We have to say, okay, wait. For some reason, we're not seeing faith communally. We're not seeing that in order to do things missionally, to go forth, to do whatever we're called to do, to work in a soup kitchen, to feed the hungry, to nurture the poor. We're not seeing those as team efforts anymore. We're seeing them as individual projects. And while it's great on an elementary school level, sometimes in the church and in the body, to get things done, we've got to work with people. We've got to be with people. I am sure and positive that the 12 disciples did not get along. You hear it time and time again as you read through the scriptures. Although Jesus called them and they had a common purpose, there's a ton of dissension amongst the disciples. They questioned who Jesus was. They would go forth and do things, and then they would come back and say, well, what you're asking us to do, God, isn't going to work. One of my favorite parables of the disciples in discrepancy is, well, it's not a parable, story, sorry. One of my favorite stories is when Jesus is feeding the 5,000. That's a prime example of the team saying, we don't know if we necessarily believe what we are working towards. And that's the reality that we all come across. You see, though Jesus pulls people together, sometimes at different parts and points within our lives, within our understanding, we reach a point where we're not sure of what we are doing anymore. Like I told the kids this morning, teamwork has to have a purpose. You can't just come in and expect it to work. You have to have purpose, a goal in mind. You have to have purpose. This past week, as I've been reading and reflecting on the different things that we're intending on studying, I'm part of a group called the Disciples Exchange on our Facebook, and it's where we dialogue back and forth about the different understandings and the different ways, different churches, different lay people, clergy people, it's everybody who's part of, quote unquote, the Disciples of Christ network. There have been quite a few debates this week, some of which I regret even commenting on because they've gone so far beyond the measure of understanding. But it really made me reflect on our purpose. You see, when Jesus was getting and gathering the disciples, he had a very distinct purpose. It was a purpose to revitalize, to revive, to create a revival within the Jewish tradition, to say, hey, we've gone too far beyond where we've been. Let us come back to the truth of God. Jesus didn't necessarily call himself the Messiah all the time. It was some of the realization that he made, and he ended up making the ultimate sacrifice. But in the beginning, when he's bringing these people together, he said, here is our purpose. Make fishers of men. Right? We're familiar with that. It's not necessarily in this story, but as you read through the different versions of the Gospels, that's the point. You're no longer looking for fish. I want you to call people back to the faith. That was Christ's purpose. So it comes down to, what is our purpose? And that's the question I've been asking this week. What is our purpose as a church? That's a heady question, right? I can see the wheels turning in many heads right now. What is our purpose as a church? Are we here to worship? Are we here to hear a sermon, good or bad? together as a body? Is our purpose to just study the gospel and see how that can impact our individual lives? Or is our purpose more outside of this building? Is our purpose to park cars on Fridays, Thursdays, and Saturdays? Is our purpose to feed the hungry? Is our purpose to be a support in the community? Is our purpose to think outside of ourselves and take our faith in some measure and do? See, there's no point in being a team without a goal. We can gather together and do things that we've always done. But sometimes we have to get the team together to focus on a common goal. And that's my wish for us. They don't have to be one goal. Sometimes as a church we have to recognize that we have multiple goals to fulfill. Because we have multiple people. When you look at the lives of the disciples as they were calling them, they were calling a variety of men into those positions. A variety of people with different skills, different accomplishments, different ways of seeing and understanding. Look around you. It's the same thing we have here. Different skills, different levels of understanding, different callings. And yet we have one purpose that splinters off into multiple purposes. Our purpose is to be Christ in this world, right? So how do we accomplish that? It's not always through recognition. We don't have Christ telling us, I know who you are, like he told Nathaniel. But we know who we are. It is harder in some ways to look inside yourself and see what you are capable of. So it's up to each of us as part of the team to look at one another and say, I see you in this. You are capable. You are able. Don't give up on what has been. Consider what is now and what is possible. Our purposes might have changed, too, over the years. I can't be the same little kid I was 20 years ago, where my only purpose was literally to fight over the candle as I'm going down. Right? We grow and we change and we adapt, and we have to find our new positions on the team. That's the only way a team is effective, is if you are able to play multiple positions. To look to somebody else as backup. Because what if somebody gets sick? What if somebody gets injured? What if someone dies? We sometimes in the church get so caught up in, well, that is their thing. They're the only one who can do it. true. Jesus offered a call to specific people. And that's a call that by his death we have been offered. It's a call that we choose to answer at different points in our lives. It's a call that we choose to accept at different points in our lives. So consider your call. Consider what you can do now. Amen. The call is one that we've all answered. Some of us multiple times in our lives, some of us only once. But it's a call that has changed and shifted us forever. And so if you feel that call on your heart, I invite you to come forward and reconfess your faith as we sing our song of celebration. I've decided to follow Jesus in our chalice hymn number 344. Let's stand.